to show you how you can make your own reeds to get your pipes playing like that. Right, well, welcome to the workshop. This is where it's all going to happen. I'm going to take you through all the stages of making a chanter reed, making regulator reeds, voicing all of the reeds, making drone reeds, and then at the end of the tape there will be a section on sort of just general maintenance tips, you know, and tricks and that sort of thing for keeping your pipes playing properly, nicely airtight and everything. Just like to mention that, save any embarrassment, I do have a bit of a stammer occasionally, so if I get hung up on a word, just hang on and it comes out in the end. Okay. Right, well, I'll just run you through the basic tools that you're going to need to follow the particular method of reed making I'm going to be using in this tape. Basically, I'll take you through the ones first that are available at sort of any ironmongers or tool shop, and then I'll take you through the specialised tools, and an address will be given at the end of the tape where you can buy the specialised tools, a couple of addresses actually. So first you're going to need some tin snips, a junior hacksaw, a Stanley type knife, which is what I use. You can use another knife if you like, but it has to be very sharp. A small hammer. This is what's left of the drawing aid. I've been using it for years, and it's a 25mm shape that you want there. I'll explain why later, but you do need one of those. You'll need some PTFE tape, a pair of fine-nosed snipe nose pliers, a small carpenter's plane, some vernier calipers. These are slipstones. These are used for sharpening. There's a sort of coarse and a fine slipstone. You'll need some honing oil, WD-40, 3-in-1, anything like that, or you can buy special honing oil. You'll need a hard pencil, a soft pencil, a sheet of 240 grit wet and dry paper, and a sheet of 600 grit wet and dry paper. An electronic tuner is very handy, but not essential. You can get away with a tuning fork in A, or sort of any other thing that you could use as a reference for tuning, like I don't know, harmonica or piano if you have one, as long as it's in concert pitch. But tuning meters are very handy. Now I'll take you through the specialised tools. You'll need 2 inside ground scribing gouges available from the address at the end, but the company that makes them is called Ashley Isles, and the numbers that you'll want are a number 3, which is a shallow gouge, and a number 6, which is a deeper gouge. You'll need 2 shooting boards, one with this end sawn off here. I'll show you why that is in a minute, and another ordinary shooting board. You'll need a hard block for chopping the heads of the reeds. You'll need, this is very, very useful, saves a lot of time, a reed template. You can mark the reeds out using all the measurements if you don't have one. I'll give you the measurements as we go along, but that will save you hours in the long run. Some black thermowax, a tube of Spanish cane, well-seasoned Spanish cane. This is for regulator and flat reeds. This is what you make the staples from, and it's 3.2 inside diameter tube. You can use copper or brass or aluminium. You'll need a length of 4mm inside diameter brass tube for making the chanter reed staples. This is a regulator reed staple, which I'll explain what I've done there later on. You'll need a sheet of light gauge copper. It's about 0.5 of a mil thick. approximately, you know, something like that. You'll need a mandrel for shaping the chanter reed staples. You'll need a mandrel for shaping the regulator and flat chanter reed staples. Now these are two profiling blocks. That's an 82mm profiling block, which is used for the chanter reeds, a 70mm profiling block, which is used for flat reeds, two of the regulator reeds, and also shaping tails as well. This is a 100mm profile. This is what you cut the head of the reed on. This is a winder, very useful. There again, you don't really need it, but it saves a lot of time and makes it much more accurate. And you'll need a ball of hemp. Basically, when you've done all that, you can start. Right, I'm going to show you the chanter reed in several stages: staple, slip, binding the head on, and so forth. You know, until we come to cutting the head down, fixing the bridle, and putting in the chanter. So I'll start with the staple first, anyway. This is the 4mm internal diameter tube I showed you earlier on. It comes in lengths now, like that. Now, for our purposes today, we're going to use the length of staple that I find works in a lot of concert chanters. It doesn't work in all of them, but I'll explain that later on when we start to get into tuning different types of chanters. But for our purposes today, cut yourself a piece of the staple to a length of 47.5mm. That's 47.5mm. Then take your mandrel and put the staple on to about sort of up there. I actually put a mark, a tiny little saw mark on the mandrel, which shows me where I can go. But it's roughly so that you're about say 5.5mm along. Now you've got to form the eye of the staple. Now the eye of the staple is very critical in tuning the reed, especially the upper octave. So the best way to start it off is to take a pair of pliers and just very sort of roughly squash the end down into it, so you get a very rough sort of thing like that. And then just work the pliers around it, like that. So you're doing a bit of the shaping. So you end up with something to start with like that. Rough enough. Now you begin the shaping. Place it on a mandrel or a flat plate. Anything that you have, steel is best. Hold your hammer in the sort of jeweler's grip, like that, and just begin to tap on one side, turn it over, tap that. Now, I've been tapping in a flat plane, as you can see. Now start to turn the staple a little bit. Tap one side, tap the other side, turn it over. Repeat the process. So that by now, your staple has taken up the internal profile of the mandrel, you see. Now concentrate on the eye, which has already become more well shapen, as you can see, just through that. Turn the mandrel like that, and just tap the eye around it. Just work on the eye. Keep turning it. now what you want to do is check the outside diameter of that eye, and what I use is basically 3 millimeters, you see. When that eye is 3 mil, it's about right. This is used in voicing chanters, especially in the upper octave. I'll go into it in deeper detail later, but basically, if you widen the eye, it helps to cure flat upper octaves. If you close it down, it goes the other way. Obviously, it helps to cure sharp upper octaves. And then the last thing to do with the staple, put it back on the mandrel, just give it a check, you know, and then score it, because this gives something for the reed head to bite onto when you're tying on. So what I do, I just go down with a saw a few times, and then so you just got it scored like that, and it's when you tie on, when you start to work the head later on away from you, it won't slip. So that's basically the staple. That's what you start with. Right, now I'm going to show you how to split the slip out and do the basic preparation on it. Take your tube of Spanish cane, and now what we want is a portion of this outside profile here, and you find you very, very rarely get a good chanter reed out of anything that's under or over the outside profile of 25 millimeters. You see, it's got to pass very snugly through there and maintain that outside profile for at least 14 to 15 millimeters. That's what you want. And also, when you're choosing your slip, try and get one that's nice and straight here. You find if you get shapes like that, it just makes reed making harder to read, you know, if you get dips and bobbles and things. So choose one with that nice 25 mil profile and the nice flat shape. Then, if you have one, which you should have, take your reed template, and now this is how you split the slip out. Just place it over your slip, mark it on each side, just move it down, leave yourself a little bit on each end, you know, a couple of mil there, mark it, then mark the length here, again leave yourself a bit, be generous. It's easier to cut off, you can't put back. Then, now, just a word on tools here, on edge tools. I'm going to be splitting with a Stanley knife. Now, edge tools, as I'm sure everybody knows, are very, very, very dangerous, and great care must be taken when working with them. Never cut towards yourself. Now, the biggest mistake I could make here would be to do that, wouldn't it? And try and disaster. So, put your Stanley knife where you're going to split, put your hand on top, and then split down the one line on the other, split down the other line. Just keep that for later. So you've got that now. There again, be careful. Now saw your slip to length. Occasionally a tube of cane is long enough so you'll get two slips out of it. This one isn't, but you know, if these slips that are left over are long enough, they're handy for making sort of Northumbrian reeds or border reeds out of. So try not to throw anything away really, it's always useful somewhere. Steady chucking it away. Right, now I'm going to bring it down to a generous 0.5 of a mil above of the final head width I want. So I want sort of 13.1 or 2 or something like that. So I'll be bringing it down to just over, you know, between closer to 14 mil, you know, a bit lower than that. What you're going to aim for on, I find, this is the way I work, sort of, if you choose a head width that you want, albeit for flat reeds, regulator reeds, or whatever head width that you're working to, basically leave your slip, you know, a good 0.5 of a mil over what you want your final head width to be. Now I'm going to bring it down. This is 15 mil and above, so I've got a bit to lose there. Now there's several ways of doing it. You can use wet and dry paper and rub it like that on each side evenly, or you can cut it with a knife. But what I do, and what I found works very successfully, is to hold a plane like that, the carpenter's plane, which you're going to use again in a minute, and holding it like that, just start to, I give it 2 or 3 on each side, just so you're bringing it down evenly. There again, watch that, be careful, don't slip, and otherwise you know, have a big gouge over your thumb. So keep going, and then when it's beginning to look about right, you get a feel for it after a while about how it's coming down. I give it a check, and that's pretty close actually. That's about 13.75, something like that. So that'll do. That's basically how you want it at the moment. Nice straight edges created by the plane, but with all the pith still on it. Okay, what we're going to do now, I'm going to show you how to bring the slip down to the depth before you do the first gouge. Basically, you're just going to get shot of all this, which you don't want. Bring the slip down to the correct depth to get it ready for the first gouge. This is done with, I find it's best to use a Stanley knife to get rid of the really rough stuff, and then plane it. I'll show you now. Cut at an angle like that, and then turn it at an angle. And remember again, edge tools, danger, always cut away from yourself. So just keep chopping it away, and then cut in the middle, turn it around, cut the sides, cut in the middle. This is very, very rough, you know, just hack away at it, but then be careful. Now start to look at these edges here. See if you can catch that in the light so you can see it. You want those to be more or less flush with the outside callus or calyx. So just keep cutting. Again, working edges, middle, edges, middle. Take the lumps out. Feel it then for sort of depth. Reed making is a very sort of hands-on thing. You've got to use your hands, feel things, you know. It's the gauges and the rulers are all very handy, but there's, you know, reed making is it's a feel thing, and the more you do it, the better you become. So bring it down so it's quite sharp on the edges. I'm still a bit proud there, you see. So just that. Now what I'm going to do is put it in a shooting board like this, which I've specially adapted. I've sawn off the end like that, and it's left just a tiny lip there, which is enough to hold the cane now for when you're going to plane it. A good thing to do here, take a sheet of your 240 wet and dry with cat hair on it, very important that, and just true the ends up so that they're nice and straight, like that. Place it in your shooting board, take your plane, and then hold the slit flat there, check that it's flat, and then run the plane down it once, twice, turn it, keep going down. So you're getting nice even strips now, which shows you that the slip is coming down flat. Basically you want it with quite sharp edges. Another warning at this stage, actually, that's a warning about lots of things, probably terrifying, but when cane gets to this stage, it can become razor sharp and you can cut yourself as badly as with any knife. So don't run your fingers enthusiastically up it, because I've done it, believe me, and it's you get a nasty cut. So basically that's ready for the first gouge now, and the depth is, I find the ideal depth for the slip at this stage is 2 millimeters in the center of the slip, with the edges sharp. Right, before I do the first gouge on the slip, I'll just take you through, you know, a few hints on sharpening the gouge. Personally, I don't use a razor sharp gouge. I find I get more control with a sort of, you know, a sharp gouge, but not like a razor. Some people prefer them very, very sharp. But anyway, to sort of hone it, occasionally you will need to have them reground, or if you've got a grinder yourself, then fine. But basically, what you're going to need is some fine oil, WD-40 or 3-in-1, anything like that. A sort of medium slipstone and a fine slipstone, and all you do is keep the oil away, by the way, from any cane or anything like that. I'll just give it a quick squirt on the end, take the worst off, and then work the slipstone across, running like that, just a few times. Just keep doing that, you know. Then take the fine one and just run it along. Now, what you create on the end when you're doing this, you get a bit of a burr or a wire. So when it's starting to look shiny along the edge, you feel a slight wire there. So just turn it slightly and just rub the back like that. And then very, very careful again with edge tools, but I find a good thing to do is just draw it back across your hand like that. And that removes any wires. And that's sharp enough. Then, very important, wipe the oil off, because you don't want oil anywhere near cane. It'll ruin it. Basically, a good test is to hold your gouge like that, and if you can see any light reflected along there, then it's probably not sharp enough. So keep going until you get it sharp enough. take you through the first gouge now. This is done with the shallow gouge, the number 3 Ashley Isles. And basically what we're doing is just giving the inside of the slip a bit of a profile. It just takes some of the work out of the block sanding later on. So don't go too mad, don't go too deep. And you want your gouge at about that angle. And then move in. Now start from the middle of the slip, or approximately. You don't have to mark it, but approximately in the middle of the slip. And just sort of begin to move down gently. Be very gentle with the gouge. Let the gouge go, and then just let it slip. Don't force it and dig into the cane. Let the, you sort of feel it, and then it goes, and just let it go. Then turn it. Feel where you started from. You feel the bump there, and then start from there. Give the gouge back. Now start to run your finger up the slip, and you'll feel where the high spots are. There's a high spot there. Again, reed making, it's very hands-on. You've got to feel things. Sort of stroke it, and take it off. Hold it up under the light and have a look at it, and you can see where there are any high spots or edges not quite right. And that is actually pretty good. There's a bit of a high spot there. So just put it back on. Feel where that is. It's okay. Turn it around. And then start to just have a look that each end of the slip is roughly the same thickness. This one, you can feel it slightly heavier, and the edge is a bit sort of heavier on that side. So just angle your gouge a little bit, give it a bit more of a bias to that side, and then just take it down and a little more off. And that's good enough for this stage, actually. And I'll just check the middle thickness of the slip for you, and it's just fractionally under 2 mil now, because it was 2 mil when it was flat, and now it's just fractionally under. So you've hardly gouged anything out. It's just at the start of the profile. As I say, just take some of the sounding work out of it. And then now is the point where you bring your slip down to the final head width. You see, because what you've done, you've really sharpened these edges up now. And if you were to carry on with that and tie the head up, the reed would probably split on you here. So that's why you leave a fraction over what you want as your final head width. So I want just 13 plus on this. So just give it a couple of licks on a flat surface on some wet and dry paper. Give it a few licks and then check it. And that's bang on. That's about 13.2 head width. Nice straight edges. A little bit of strength in the edges, but still nice and thin. You see, at this point, you should just be able to see light down the edges. It should just catch the light. If it's too thick, keep gouging, because it'll be no good if it's too thick. Right, now we're going to mark the slip with the use of the template. As I say, it's I really would advise you to get one of these, because it takes a lot of work out of it, and as I say, the address will be given at the end where you can get them. So get yourself I use just a piece of old hardwood or something, just a nice flat surface. Put your slip on it, and then place the template down over the slip. Press down on it, and it should be nice and firm and not rock. If it does rock across like that, if you're making concert reeds, then your slip's too thick. But you know, if you're making something like a bass regulator reed, which is a very wide head, then it's going to rock then. So just bear that in mind, that you know, if you are making a big reed, then a bit of rock is acceptable, but it should be nice and firm. Now take a hard lead pencil and just put a nice sharp point on it. Excuse the Manchester United pencil sharpener. And hold it, and then angle your pencil in like that, so you get a nice tight line in to the edge of the template, you see. This is called marking the tails. I'm just going to have to put my hand across to do the other one, sorry. Okay, now you've marked your tails out. These ends of the reed are the tails. If you notice in the middle here, it's got two V's. So draw the V's out, and that indicates where the exact middle of the reed is. Take the template off, and there you have your slip marked out. Okay, this is pairing the slip now. This is just shaping the tails, and this is about the only time in reed making where you actually cut towards yourself with the Stanley knife. Okay, so be very, very careful, but there's a technique that you use. Just put the Stanley knife on the first mark of the slip, and then just begin to just pare away. It is very, very gentle. Pare away, right down to the pencil line. Follow the pencil line down until you've cut to the pencil line, and you have that initial shape of the tail there, you see. Then turn it over, and you can cut away from yourself again now. Again, the same thing, just, you know, take little bits off at a time. There's no need to go mad. You know, it's best thing with reed making is always have light hands. You know, anything you do, try and keep your hands as light as possible. So you've shaped that, and then follow me down. Just put it on there and cut to length like that. That's how you do it. You turn it around and do the other end. I'll do this one quickly because you don't need both lengths. You can see if you do it a lot of times, you can do it a lot quicker. Yeah, see, that's shaped, and it's the right length. So that's what you've got now. A shaped slip. Next stage is imparting the inner profile that you're after onto the inside of the slip of cane, which is actually the speaking part of the reed. So what you want to do, a good thing, it's got to be sounded on this block. This is an 82mm block, and is available from the same the same place that will give you the address for at the end, or one of the specialist tools. So cut yourself a piece of 240mm grit wet and dry paper, place it on the block. Now what we're going to do now is take a heavy lead pencil, a 6B or a 5B, something like that, you know, artist pencil, and shade in the whole inside of the reed, the gouged side, that is, you know. Shade it in with a heavy lead pencil, and this works like rub it in with your thumb. this works like engineer's glue. You know, if an engineer is scraping in a bearing or something, it'll use glue on it to show the high spots. Well, the pencil does the same thing. Okay, so you've done that. Wrap the paper tightly around the block. You can even tape it, but I find the paper loses its cut quite quickly, and you want to be changing it quite often, so I just hold it on. But you can tape it on. Now, we want to sand the slip along its whole length. So start from one end, and there again, keep the slip nice and flat. The temptation and the tendency is to pull the slip up like that when you're trying to work it, and you're not going to get it evenly sanded. So again, light hands, nice and flat, and just begin to rub. Let the paper do the work for you. You know, don't sort of really dig into it, because the paper's got the cut, and the more gentle that you are, the flatter the slip will be. Just keep at it, and you can see where the high and low points are now. So keep going there, then turn it, start from the other end. This is just the patience part. You've just got to keep at it. You know, you get there in the end. Now go in the middle. Keep working at it. Keep turning it. See, it's coming down now. We're getting the profile. Start. Just keep moving it about, turning it around until eventually you get a nice smooth, evenly profiled slip. That's not there yet. You see, there's a bit of a high spot there, a bit there. You can still see pencil along here. Incidentally, these areas at the end are going to be gouged a second time out. So this area here at the inside of the slip, which is going to be the speaking part of the reeds, is the most important. Pay the most attention to this area. But as I say, sand the slip overall evenly, and this helps to stop air leaks and that sort of thing when you tie the head up. So just keep going. There, now it's nice and clean there in the middle. There's a couple of bits here, they're going to be gouged again, so that is good enough. Okay, we're going to do what's called the second gouge now. This is gouging out the tails. So go back as a reference to your V points in the middle of the reed and just make a little pencil line on the inside of the reed. Now, I sort of have a benchmark or a block mark on my sanding block, and I know it's got 15 millimeters there, but it's actually, you've got a centre line, and then it's 18 millimeters back from each centre line. So put your reed on the centre line and go 18 millimeters this way and 18 millimeters that way, and just make two little pencil marks like that. Sorry, I'll try to use it quickly. Just draw a line across. Go Go back to the hard lead pencil and shade this area in. And again, just sort of work it in with your thumbs. So that's what you've got now, you see, at this stage. And the tails here, you see, it's still thick. Now we're going to thin the tails out in a gradient gouge, and also this will create a sort of a tone. What actually happens when you tie the head on, your staple comes to about there-ish somewhere. And what you're going to do now is create a tone chamber over the eye of the staple, and this helps a lot with the volume, tone, and a particular tuning of the reed as well. So that's what we're going to do now, is create the tone chamber. Put your slip down. Now you use the number 6 gouge now, the steep gouge, and go in from the line and take one long gouge right to the end of the tails. So you start with that. Then from about a third of the way down, go a bit steeper, 2/3 of the way down, go even steeper. So you're beginning to bring the tails down, you see, and create a scoop. Now we want to concentrate on this part here. Now if you have a look where the shoulders break, there, we're going to gouge out at an angle over those. Now it's best on this side of the reed to angle your gouge that way, on that side of the reed angle your gouge that way. So using the edge of the gouge, go in from there and just gouge out the V so it leaves, that angle leaves the reed more or less exactly where the shoulders break. Okay, well I continued the gouging, as you can see, evenly on each side, and it reduces in a gradient from about 2 to 1 to practically nothing at the end of the tails. And you want the sides of the tails here nice and thin as well. This helps the reed head to tie up around the staple later on. So just turn it around, do exactly the same on the other end, exactly the same. We go one long gouge down, another one from a third, another one from 2/3. Turn your gouge, do the corners, leaving at the shoulders. Now concentrate on the edges here, angle your gouge, go down, go down. It helps if you hold the slip with your fingers here as well, and you don't hack so much away out of your shooting board. You know, they last a bit longer, and you don't blunt your gouge so often either. See that? Keep checking that you're even on both sides. That side's okay, but that side's a little proud, so I'm going to take a little bit more off there. And then, now just feel it, the lumps. A good way to even it out is to sort of just do that with your gouge. Right, that there needs to be a little steeper where it leaves. This if you don't get this chamber right here, like having the eye of the reed too closed, or this chamber not big enough, it can cause flatness in the upper octave. Now, just to tidy that up, take the 70mm sanding block, put the 240 grit on again, and then just from where the shoulders break, just give it a little tidy up, little sanding. So it's like that. And then what I like to do now is to take bring the 82mm block back, take a little piece of the finer grade paper, the 600 grade, and just smooth the speaking area of the reed out again. You sort of reaffirm the profile as well, and you're creating a nice smooth passage of a nice smooth place for the air to pass through the reed. Don't go too mad. So what you get is that, you see. Okay. Right, now chopping the head in half or cutting the head. Use a 100mm cutting block, or anything like that, as long as it's not so steep an angle, so when you put the head on it, if you apply pressure to it, it would split the head. So have a nice flat profile. Using your two V's as a reference mark, draw a pencil line straight across. Just gives you the middle of the reed. Now, to cut it in half so as you don't fracture or squash or stress this part of the reed, which is actually going to be, well, the most important actually. You cut a wedge out first. So put it on the cutting block and go in at that angle and then that angle with a Stanley knife, like this. Cut in first, turn it, and then split a wedge out, like that. Now, I find it's best to put it right on the edge of the cutting block, like that. And you use the edge of the cutting block and the edge of the reed to get it dead straight, you see. Sort of in the middle it could be a bit skew, but I like to put it right on the edge, and then it gives me a good sort of sight then to cut the reed head straight. So you can see the wedge has been cut and chopped out, reed nice and straight. Now we're going to cut in half with the rolling cut. So put your Stanley knife right on the reed and just go for it. Try and get it as straight as you can. Yeah. And invariably one always falls on the floor. So there you have the two halves of your reed head. Okay, this is tying and shaping the reed head. What I've done is I've taken some of the hemp, which you get from the specialist suppliers again, and the thermowax, and I've waxed the hemp. Best way to do it, incidentally, is tie it off to something, anything, and then rub the wax into it, holding it under tension. And I've waxed about 7 yards or so, which is more than enough. But you always need a few bits hanging around to sort of tie the head up with. So it's always a good idea wax more than you need, you know. So cut yourself to tie the head about 14, 15 inches or something like that, approximate, you know. Keep that safe. Put the reed head together now, as it's going to be on the reed, and just on about the last third of the head, just tie it up with the wax thread, going down the way. If you tie it in a good broad band like that, it helps stop the reed head splaying about when you're tying it up. Don't use too much tension though, just a nice even tension. If you start pressing and working it now, you're going to split the head, you see, split the cane. And just true it up a little bit. So you've got that. What you want to do now is the shoulders, just round the shoulders off by using 240 grit. That's 600 grit. 240 grit on a nice flat surface. And give it about half a dozen rubs at that sort of angle, at a flat angle, you see. So you go 2, 4, 5, 6, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you just round the shoulders off. Don't take it down there too much. Now put points on your tails. There again, about half a dozen usually does it. And you get, as you get more practiced, you can get the points more or less centered, dead center every time. That's what you're aiming for. Now, sand away the ends here till they're very thin. Hold it on there. Sand them away there. Sand them. This helps tying the reed head on again. So you've done that. Now you want to chamfer the edges. For this, use use a knife, or an old Stanley blade is good. And just from the shoulders, I'd give it about 6 or 7 scrapes down at an angle, like that. Turn it again, until you've done all the sides. And then, I know this is going to sound crazy because moisture and Uilleann Pipe reeds don't mix, but now, just on these bits here, just on the very bit, just wet the reed, just the tails, like that. Not too much, but enough. This gives the seasoned, very, very dry cane a bit of give and a bit of elasticity for the next stage, which is when we're going to tie the head on, and this helps it take up the shape around the bridle and prevents splitting and other things. So basically, that's our reed head there, prepared, and we're all set to tie up now. Okay, now I'm going to fit the reed head over the staple. Take your staple, which you've already prepared. Take the reed head and then just slide it gently up onto the staple. Now it should be a nice, see, it's a nice sliding fit. If it's too loose, you're going to get problems, and if it's too tight, you're going to get problems as well. The problems are, if it's too tight, when you push it on, when the reed head is tied up, that pressure, when you cut the reed head down later, will close this part of the reed down and it chokes the reed. If it's too loose, then the binding is going to pull that apart and the reed head is going to pop open at the lips when you cut it. So it's got to be just right. It's got to be just a nice sort of a resistance there. Yeah. Now you set the length of your reed. Now this is important, vitally important, and differs occasionally from chanter to chanter. But I found a good mean average for a lot of concert chanters using this length of staple, that head width, and that sort of thing. A good overall length is between 79 millimeters to 78 millimeters overall reed length. Now, if you're getting problems with other things like flat or sharp back Ds are tuned from the lips of the reed to the eye of the staple, and that distance there is what tunes your back reed. So back D, sorry. So if on your particular chanter it's sharp, move the reed head out a little bit after you've made a few. If you found it's consistently sharp, if it's consistently flat, move it in a little bit. But anyway, we'll go for 79 mil on this one. So I just take my vernier gauge, lock it off at 79 mil, and then set the reed. Not used to working on this device like this. Okay, that's set at 79 mil. Jiggle it around and get it, you know, try and get it in the middle of the staple as much as you can. Then we put it onto the winder then. Carefully place it onto the winder. Now, a good thing to do, you don't have to do it, but it's a good thing. It holds the reed head on for you now, and it gives you a chance to sort of do a bit of final centering of the head. Just use a bit of this PTFE tape, it's called plumber's tape, and just put a bit on to hold the reed head on. Take it off, just have a look at it again. And the best way I've found of getting a reed in the centre is to just do it, and you know, just have a look at it until it looks right, and then put it back on the winder and turn it, and you can see if it's skew width or centred, and that's pretty much centred. So now, one of the great thou shalt nots in reed making is thou shalt not tie up above the eye of the staple. And so if you notice, I've only done the PTFE up to the eye of the staple, and that's left me a marker as to where it is. What happens if you tie up over the eye of the staple? You sort of get a choked reed, and it doesn't seem as responsive, and it seems more prone to squeaks. Things like that, you know, it generally just interferes with the reed. So if you can get the reed to close up before the eye of the staple, great, even better. But certainly don't tie up past the eye of the staple. So now, taking your hemp, just get it on. Just get it on the preliminary line. I'll just check that again because I marked it. And now you do the first winding. Now the first winding is done with a very moderate tension. This is so you don't split the reed head. You tend to find if you go too tight here, you get a problem with split reed heads. Whereas if you bring the tension up gradually over a few winds, the reed head doesn't go. And keep the strands nice and close together. See, I'm just got a moderate pull on it. You can hear, occasionally you hear sort of telltale clicking, you know, and that's the cane moulding and taking up the shape. Oh, it's also trying to split as well, so if you hear clicking, then ease off. Go up to there. Right, we're at the eye of the staple now. So go back now, back over yourself. Again, keeping the strands nice and tight together. Now when you get to here, start to lean into it a bit more. Put a bit more pressure on it. Now you're getting the tension on it. Now you can really dig into it. Go up. Keep going, nice and tight. And then when you start to approach the reed head again, now start to slacken off again a little bit. If you can see here, this side is closed down already. This side is just minutely open. Probably means like I didn't gouge quite enough here. There, one of the shoulders is a bit heavier than the other, but that doesn't matter. It'll close down now. We'll just keep going. Keep going. And it's gone. It's closed. Slacken off. Slacken off. Now just go down in a spiral like that, and then go right the way down the reed. Now what you do here, it depends on the reed sleeve of your chanter. If you've got the excuse the scruffy PTF eater. If you've got the O'Brien and Howard type of brass tube inset there, then leave it like that, you know. But if you've got a conical reed seat, then put yourself, you know, a bit more on. You'll get to know what your chanter needs. So then just go back up in a sort of wide spiral, snapping off. And you keep these bits because they're handy for making drone reeds or tying up reed heads and all that. Wax temp is the reed maker's friend. And just rub the wax in like that. You can even, there's all sorts of ways you can seal this now. You can, you know, everybody has their own individual preference. I find just working the wax in with my fingers like that is enough. But you can seal it with anything you like, really. And there you go. That's a blank. Okay. Okay, we're going to cut the head now. Always use a new blade. You know, it's the cost of a blade is cheap, and it makes the job much easier. And if you do have if the blank does have a crack on one side, start on that side, because it's pointless cutting the other side if it's going to go. You know, so you start about let me see. This is all by eye after a while. Start about 6 or 7 millimeters up from the binding, and give it one long cut like that. The crack's going to be okay. Now, start to cut out on one side towards the tip of the reed like that. Then cut the other side. Towards the tip. Now don't go too shallow here, but start to cut down now in steps towards the lips of the reed. What happens if you go too thin here, when you've done the final sanding and scraping, the reed's going to be weak and you're going to lose response in the upper octave and have all sorts of tonal and tuning problems. Turn it around, do exactly the same on the other side. Go down in steps, then the side. Actually, it doesn't matter if you do steps or sides first, it's up to you. Just keep cutting down. And then here, thin the lips out. Now, check, start to check the thickness of the lips, you see. And you want those to be exactly even on each side of the reed. And at this point, if you hold it up to a strong light bulb, you should just see a V starting in the reed. This side is heavier than that side, so I'm going to cut a bit more there. It's very important to get both blades of your reed equal, because this causes, if they aren't, it'll cause response problems and squeaks and all sorts of things. Now you've got it to that stage, get yourself anything flat really, and your 240 grade paper, and then place the reed head flat on the paper. Now I'm going to do a rotary sanding motion first, just to get the shape of the V and take the knife marks out of the reed head. See, that's, you're getting the V and the knife marks are coming out. Turn it over, do the other side. There again, hold it flat and don't press too hard. Let the paper do the work for you. That's coming now. There again, at this stage, a good thing to remember, if anybody has you know, asthma or bronchial problems, you do get quite a lot of dust. So I got into the habit of, when I'm sanding, just blowing the reed head off. And then when you've established your V's in that shape, check the width of the lips. See, this looks quite open. And now start to work on about the last third of the reed. Start to thin that part of the reed down. This time using a vertical sanding motion. Work on the reed, keep looking at the lips, and try and get your blades even now. Because if you don't get the blades even, you're going to have a problem with response, and also causes squeaks and poor tone and that sort of thing. And now try the reed. It'll need a bridle, so pinch the reed there where you would put the bridle, and you should be getting a crow. There we are, getting a crow. Don't worry if it's not speaking, because it's quite open, because the best ones are the ones you've got to close down, you know, not the ones you've got to open up. The ones you've got to open up with the bridle, if they've closed down too much and you like that, are usually weak. The ones you've got to close down are usually the good ones. So I think at this point it's, I'll just check that. Yes, you can see light coming through there in the V. Right, and I'll show you how to make a looped bridle. I like using a loop bridle. I'll explain why as I put it on. You can just use an ordinary flat bridle, but as I say, I prefer the loop one. Mark out a sheet of the gauge copper I told you earlier on into a 3mm strip. Now you can buy copper already cut in long strips, specially made for bridles from the address again at the end of the tape. So now just cut the strip of that off, straight as you can. And then now there are special pressing tools you can get for making these, but this is the way I make them. Take that now and just bend it in half. Take your pliers and press it together. Not totally together, so you've got about that much left of a hole. Pull the sides out, so you've now got that shape. Okay, then take it, put it over a socket or anything, you know, anything that has a nice circle shape to it like that. And just shape it with a hammer. Just tap it round. So you've got that. Then just flatten it. Turn it over. And now you've got a loop bridle. Now we're going to fit that to the reed. Now you can either fit the bridle at the bottom of the reed, a perfect reed, the great reed, the good reed, will take a bridle there. That's basically the ideal place for it. But a lot of reeds seem to work with the bridle just slightly higher. And you can always move the bridle, so you know, I'm going to try it there in the assumption that this may not be the perfect reed. And have a look at the length of it, because you don't want the bridle to touch on the other side, so that's a little bit long. So just trim that down a little bit. Now fitting the bridle is very, very, very important, okay? Get that loop in the middle and just bend it around with your thumbs and fingers, pinch it together, and then bend the other side around and pinch it together. Then take the pliers and holding it like that, sort of work the bridle around so it fits, it takes up these corners exactly. Turn it and work it around. You see, that's a lovely tight fit on there. Now I'll show you the purpose of why you have a loop. As you can see, the shoulders of the reed here slope in. Now the bridle won't be touching exactly there. So what you do is you nip the bottom of the loop, and it pulls the bridle into shape around the reed, you see. Then you can see it's very open now. So begin to close it down, begin to tease it closed. Never close a reed down in the middle, by the way, always from the edges of each bridle edge. And then test. Got a good strong crow there. Now I'm going to do something that some people say you shouldn't do to a reed unless it needs it, but I think it improves any reed. I'm going to cut the corners just very, very slightly, each corner like that. just chop them off so that they're like that. This seems to take some of the reluctance out of a reed, and it also helps in attaining the upper octave later on when you do the final sanding on the tips. So it's already improved that reed, you see, because it's closing at a harder breath, which is what you're aiming for. So that's basically ready to have a go in the chanter now. Right, now we come to the really fun bit, voicing a reed. I'm going to use my chanter, which is a Uilleann Pipes chanter, and which a lot of people are after actually. And we offer it, put the chanter, put the reed into the chanter. And the first thing you've got to do is get the A in tune, and then you can tune everything else around that. So it helps if you've got a tuning meter. So we'll see where the A is. Just minutely sharp. So if it's sharp, I just move the chanter reed out a little, and that flattens it. Conversely, if you move it in sharp with it, bang on A. Then we see where the back D is. Spot on. Bottom D. You hear there's a difference between the hard D and the bottom D. And the hard D is dropping out easily. This means that the reed needs a little more scraping. Soft D in tune. Hard D sharp. So we'll use a shim. As I say, a good thing, you know, I've been using the cardboard shim as a lot of people do, but I came across a good trick recently. Use a bit of yogurt carton or margarine carton or something like that, and actually bend it like that. And it's not just like a gimmick or anything, but it does. I don't understand why, but it works. But it works in a different way than using a circular shim. Because when you put it in, it makes the hard D much easier to get and much more stable, and it also sort of helps to, with if there's any problem between the pitch of the hard D and the soft D, it tends to sort of cure that quite a lot of the time. So we'll see. He's holding now. Dropping out, and the pitch is the same. We'll try that on the meter. Exactly the same. Slightly flat now, if anything, but that only means chopping a bit off the shim. But you get the idea. That's how you tune a bottom D. So we'll have a look at the rest of it now. And the way now I've got the A and the D and the bottom D in tune. Taking it for granted that the rest of your chanter is true. You try the differentiation between the C natural and the C sharp now. What tends to happen, quite a lot of chanters, it can be a fault in the chanter, or it can be a mismatch of a reed in the chanter. You will get a poor C natural and a poor differentiation with a C sharp. The C sharp will be weak, and occasionally it isn't there at all, and occasionally the C natural isn't there at all. And this can be a problem with the scrape on the reed. If you're having trouble in gaining a C natural, try widening the scrape. I use a wide scrape anyway. Some people use quite a narrow scrape. So if you are using a narrow scrape and you're having problems with your C natural, as I say, just widen the scrape from the bottom out, leaving the reed edge at about 4 to 5 millimeters from the actual lips, widening the scrape, and that improves, can help, quite often does improve a weak C natural. Also, I think you could try for a weak C natural as well is moving the bridle down. I mean, this has a good C natural with back D, so there's no need to move the bridle really. But quite often, if you have a poor C natural, move the bridle right down, open the base of the reed slightly, and then knit the bridle closed again to close the lips of the reed, and just opening that bottom area of the reed here over the eye of the staple can improve the C natural and also the E in the upper octave in the second octave. If not, check again that it is in pitch, because if the chanter reed is too far into the chanter and you're above concert pitch, this can cause a problem of playing the C, and you quite often find if the reed is sharp, if you pull it out, you get a much better C natural. But if the chanter's true and it's a good reed and it's the right reed for the chanter, you get a good C. And basically that's it. I just check the rest of the chanter. That's lovely. The only thing now we're going to check is the upper octave. But one thing, the reed's a little hard at the moment. So before I get the upper octave playing properly, I'll just sand the reed a little bit. It won't need too much. Always do small increments at a time rather than too much, because you ruin a reed. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to ease the lips of the reed to gain the upper octave easier. So what I do is I use a flat surface again, a piece of fine grade wet and dry paper, hold it flat. Now put your reed in at about that angle, it's not 45 degrees now, about, say you're on a flat plane, about that much, and just give them, say, 4 or 5 rubs, turn it over, blow the dust off again, and then try it in the chanter. It's fine in most places, except when you play an A, it's dropping out. So it just has a tendency to break. So it needs a little more sanding. Here again, start checking how the lips are moving. Feel the reed head like that, and this lip is moving much easier than that lip, so that just tells you that this side of the reed is slightly heavier than that side of the reed. So work on the heavy side of the reed and give it a bit more of a flat sound first. Then angle it up again and thin the blade. The thing to watch out for when you're sanding a head is your back D. If it starts to break up on you, there are ways of curing it, but it's a good strong back D still, and the A is still slightly touchy. So I'm going to do, a little more on the heavier side of the reed here. Same again, bit of flat sounding. Thin the lips. Just a little bit on the other side as well. The A's there, but if you notice now, the C sharp has become slightly wobbly. So, now we're going to cut the head. It's best to get all of the sanding and scraping done before you cut the head. Okay? So, the back D's look good and strong, the C sharp is only just starting to go, and the upper octave it's playable. It's there, but it's still a hardish reed. So I'm just going to give it a couple of last licks, and then I'm going to cut the head. And we can ease it. It's quite a bright, lively reed, lively reed and strong anyway. So that would stand a bit of closing down yet and ease the upper octave. So now, cutting the head. Get it straight, try and get it straight. And cutting it is sort of, you take the merest sliver off, you'd hardly be able to measure it. And put it on a special hardwood head cutting block, which has a domed surface. And then put it down, hold it with your finger like that, and then just sight along it. Cut the lips. You can see that? The merest sliver. That's how much I've taken off. Now we'll try that again. I say it himself. The whole reed is livelier, brighter, easier to play. It's got a much better overall tone and snap. High B rolls. That's all there. I'd be quite happy with that, mate. Right, I'll give you a few other tips now about voicing a reed, flat upper octaves and that sort of thing. A good way of curing a flat upper octave is with a rush in the chanter. Now there's some people have got things about putting a rush in a chanter. There's nothing wrong with it at all, because I think they claim it attenuates the tone of a chanter. Well, it can do if you put too many of them up, but Leo also always claimed that his chanters were tuned with a rush. You get them in tune with a rush. And so basically what you do, if your upper octave is a little flat, the best way to check that is over the tenor drone, by the way. These meters are no good for testing the relationship of the higher and the lower octave of your Uilleann pipes. So it's going to be a tenor and a baritone on this one. If it was flat, I'd insert a rush, just to illustrate the point of a rush. This is a rush that has been inserted already in the chanter. See, it's quite long, of which meant it needed a fair amount of flattening. And as you can see, it's held in place with a paper clip somewhere in the ball like that. And this flattens the whole length of the chanter, brings the first octave down, and brings it more into relation with the top octave. It doesn't have to be a rush, you know. You could pare a piece of cane down, use a piece of copper wire, a piece of spaghetti if you're desperate. Anything like that. It's quite often the worst note that you get flat on a chanter is the A, and if it's had undercutting done on it. Now undercutting is where, if the rest of the chanter was in tune, but one note is out of tune in the upper octave, you would take a file of some sort and underscore that way towards the end of the chanter. Just to illustrate undercutting a bit further, if you've established that the chanter isn't true and it's actually the chanter that's causing a note to be flat in the upper octave, then undercutting, as I was trying to say earlier on, is filing away the inside of just under the hole at that angle, sort of angle. I just do a little bit at a time again, and then keep trying it, and you generally get it in tune. If a note is flat to the rest of the chanter, you can put a slight scoop in the chanter over the note. And this will raise the pitch of the chanter over that particular note. You can toy around with that. As you can see here, the A on this chanter is sharp. So you could fill that hole in there with a little bit of wax of the same colour as the chanter if you wanted to, or if you're in a rush. Just use a bit of tape. Back Ds now. On chanters that are quite heavy here, you can't often get flat back Ds, even with a good reed. So you scoop. This one isn't. This one's quite thin here, but you would scoop the back D. I'll show you on my Bridle chanter what Uilleann's done here to get the C's and everything in tune. He's left a lot of meat there and scooped it down. You see, he sharpened the chanter here and left it flat there to get a good strong C. But this leaves a slightly flat back D. So as you can see, he's scooped the chanter there, and this raises the back D, strengthens it. And it also gives you a nice scoop for playing triplets in. Regulators, the bane of every piper's life. But they can be got in tune, and they can be made to play steady and true and squeak free by several sort what it means. First of all, I'll give you the measurements for the regulator reeds. Now the process, what I use, is, I don't know what people use, but they're exactly the same. I make them exactly the same as I make my chanter reeds, but the staples and head widths are different. But basically, the process is exactly the same. So make your reeds, make your regulator reeds the way you've made the chanter reeds, but using these dimensions. The tenor reed I use has an 11.5 width head, an overall length of 78 millimeters, and the staple is that other staple I showed you earlier on, the 3.2 internal diameter staple, using that other mandrel I showed you earlier on, which is used for the regulators and flat chanter reeds. So that's the measurement for the tenor reed. I'll explain about tuning in a minute. The measurement for the baritone reed is a mean 12.5 head and 79 millimeters overall. Again, using the 3.2 mil staple and that mandrel. Then the base. No, you can use 3.2 mil tube on this, but you have to make a longer reed. I've been using the same chanter reed tubing on this, and you don't have to make such a long reed. So it's on this one, it's the 4 mil internal diameter. 14.5 head width. And 79 to 80 millimeters overall. Now I'll explain about tuning the base reg first, being as I've got it out. First you get that reed, and then offer it up to the regulator. If it's flat, if it's sharp, the same as using a rush in a chanter, you use a rush in the regulator, like this. Now, my Burke drones, drones and regs, these are made by Johnny Burke. The aim on a hell of a lot of Johnny Burke stuff is always a bit sharp. So you find that you tend to have to flatten just the lower half of the regulator with a good blob of blue tack over the A, you see, and this brings it nicely into tune. Another thing you can do, I'll show you, if the reed is still very sharp, take your base regulator out and take something handy like and the internal wooden reed and air carrier here, move it out like that, and that'll flatten the reed. But always check with the cap of the base reg that you're not going too far, that you're not going to hit the top here. If the reed's too flat, then sharpen it by moving the carrier in. And then once you get it more or less in tune, you can also gain a little more tuning. Also gain a little more tuning regulator in and out. You can tune the bass reg there. I've gone too far with moving the reed carrier back, so I just push it in a little bit, and now they're bang on again. Right, that's the bass reg. I've showed you all the tricks of getting that in tune. And as I say, play around with head widths and staples and reed lengths and that sort of thing, and you can get most regs going quite well. Tuning parameters on the other two regs, you don't have as much because you can't move your reg in and out for a start. You don't have a carrier that you can move, but you can move the reed in the regulator. Of course, moving it in sharpens it, moving it out flattens it. A good trick to do it, if you saw the reed mount in my chanter here was a brass tube. If you set brass tube slightly larger than the outside diameter of your regulator reed and araldite it in, you've got instant sort of easy tuning then. It's a job I've done for loads of people, and I always meant to do it on my regs and I never had time. Anyway, and then you've got that, then a rush again. This one only has a tiny rush here because the D is always a little sharp, so I flattened it with that. Now my regulators have pistons in them, which you move on a screw thread, and you can move them up and down like at the bore of a flute, and you can alter the pitch quite a lot that way. I mean, actually changing where the nodes are, the harmonic nodes are in the regulator. Another thing you can do, if one particular note is flat or sharp and is obviously being incorrectly made, you know, I've removed the key from the F sharp on this regulator, and the piston was there, as you can see. The G and the F sharp have always been a little sharp on this one, but the rest of the reg's okay. But that's how you tune regulators, with rushes and things. But say any given note was sharp on the regulator, and you wanted to change it in the overall tuning, you know, if only that one note was wildly sharp. What you do is cut yourself, you know, a piece of cardboard or something like that, and just make a half circle in there, and then push the cardboard up until it's actually closed the hole, and then move it up past the hole until you've got it a quarter or a half closed, and then try that. And just by moving that bit of cardboard, opening and closing the hole, you can alter the pitch a lot. Also, underscoring again, quite a lot of regulators, the F sharp is flat in actual fact. So you use a woodwind technique to sharpen the note, where you underscore towards the reed end of the instrument, as opposed to towards the bottom end for pure and flat upper octaves. So if you've got a flat F sharp, really sort of underscore it quite a lot, and you can bring it back up into tune quite well. But there we are. By means of using the regulator measurements I've given you, I found working quite a hell of a lot of regulators actually, and a few flat regs as well, strangely enough. And so by altering and just playing around with where you put the reed, lengths of the rushes, moving the bridles, of course closing the reed sharpens it, opens it, flattens it, moving the bridle up, I will do the, I will flatten it. And so by playing around with all of these things, you can and should be able to get your eggs snapped on. I've worked out on my own rather revolutionary making drone reeds, but it works, you know. They said Marconi and everybody was crazy. Well, I am crazy, but my drone reeds work. And the what you want is for a tenor drone reed, you know, a piece of cane with an inside diameter of 3 millimeters, thereabouts. Smaller or larger, you know. Smaller will sharpen it, larger will flatten it, conversely with everything else. 3 for the tenor drone, 4 for the baritone drone, and 5 mil or bigger for the bass drone. What I'm going to make now is just one drone reed. The rest of them will be made the same way. It's just the bores and lengths that are different. I'm going to make a tenor reed. Now, I found the overall length for a good tenor reed is 65 millimeters, because this is rather long, but you sharpen it in another way later on. So mark your cane out to 65 mil, and then very carefully just score around it. Don't press too hard because you'll split it. And when you've scored around it, I find it's best not to saw all the way through, but just sort of jiggle it off like that. And you'd get another reed out of that as well. Take a round needle file, and then take the pith out of it. Lots of jokes in there. Clean the bore out. And incidentally, at this point, if you've got, if one end is slightly smaller than the other end, use that end to actually go into the body of the drone. It seems to improve the playability. Cut yourself just a piece of cork. Put it in the wide end like that. Take a bit of sealing wax. Dab it on the end of the drum. Watch that stuff because it burns. Wait for it to go off. Then test for air tightness. It should be, you know, like 1000% airtight, otherwise it's useless. That's good. Now, remember I told you earlier on the chanter reed stage to keep all your old bits of waxed hemp? Well, this is where they come in useful. Take a bit now. Plate that round. No, I won't do it now. Now, just bind off the end where it's going to go into the drone, like that. It depends on the reed seat in your drones. You might have to taper this part to chop it down if you've got a narrow reed seat to push it in. But on my Burke drones, straight in. And it's a good thing now to get a really good tight air seal at this moment before you've split the cane, because afterwards if you've got to force the cane around and it's been split, it tends to break easily. It's got a lot more strength at this stage, so force it into the drone now and get it good and steady. Test for air tightness. Now, this is one I made earlier. As you can see, it's backwards. Most drone reeds go in that way with the tongue facing that way, but I make mine upside down. The tongue's faced this way, and I've been making them this way for 4 or 5 years now, and I find that it makes for a much more stable and longer lasting drone reed. I'm sure some clever person one day will come out for a damn good reason why. But what I think happens is, in the actually in the stock with an ordinary drone reed, with the airflow forcing this way over it, I think it's trying to force the tongue, lift the tongue back all the time. Whereas with the tongue this way around, the air seems to pass more smoothly over it, and you don't get half as many variations in pitch and all that sort of stuff, you know. And it's I've just found them to be a much better reed. So tie off about, let me see, 5 or 6 millimeters from the end, and here go round first and tie a knot off. Now get it really tight, so you're stressing the cane. You're sort of actually pinching the cane in, and then tie it off. I actually usually do 2 or 3 knots there, but for the sake of speed, I'll just do that. But do a couple more knots to keep it tight. What that does, it stresses the cane here, and so when you go to split the tongue up, it's automatically going to make the tongue pop up a little bit, and it stops the drone from stopping up so much under pressure. Now, very few pieces of drone cane are actually straight. So other people tell you are different. Other people will tell you to use the concave side. That's the side that dips in. Well, I don't like that. I haven't found that. I use the convex side. And so choose that as your side to split. And you want to split from that end. And don't forget, you're making it backwards. And then go from about 4 or 5, 6 mil again. It's all rather approximate with drone reeds. And then go in, not too deeply, with a single edged razor blade like that, at a fairly steep angle, like that. Don't go in too deeply. Go deeper than you need, and then come back. And then check the blade is straight, and then split, and run the blade all the way down, like that, so you've got that. Now, it's trying, so what you've got to do now is the old traditional snap and roll technique. Roll it through your hand, and then test. It's trying. Snap it. Roll it. I find it helps if you encourage them as well, like actually put them in the body of the drum, and they quite often go off like that. Try that in the pipes now. I tend to do drone reeds against other drone reeds which are already in tune. So we'll test this. to concert pitch, so it's flat. So we've got to sharpen it. Now there's a number of ways you can sharpen it. It seemed to be fairly stable, so it doesn't need, it might not need scraping, but just to sharpen it a tiny bit, I'll put a tuning bridle on it. Firmly, but not too tight. Just go around about 3 times. Tie off a couple of times. Firm it in again and just test it. Too much. Move the bridle back. Give it a tiny bit of a snap. And try it again. Try the reed on its own. It's tending to drop out slightly under slight slackening of pressure, so scrape it a little bit. Very gently. Scrape right towards the end of the tongue. Some people don't say. Some people say don't scrape along the whole length of the reed, but I do. It's whatever works for you, really. Scrape along the whole length. This will not only lighten the reed, but it'll also sharpen the reed a little as well. Because as you can see, the drone slide is at full extension at the moment. And I found with making drone reeds, it's best if you can get, they work a lot better if you can get your slides out as far as you possibly can. You know, they seem to get more back pressure in the reed and they play steadier. But if it's a good reed and it plays with a slide a long way up, but it's still a good reed, then it's a good reed, you know. Using much air. It's still a little sharp, but it's, as you can see, the principle is going well. Right, so basically to recap on the drones, as you saw, this method works and works quite well. If you prefer to do it a traditional way, by all means do. But use the same technique, you know, tying tight here, but split the tongue out the other way around. The tuning principles are exactly the same. A tuning bridle will sharpen a drone. Scraping will sharpen it, make it easier to blow, stop dropping out under in the slight fluctuations of pressure, you know, I mean, won't drop in pitch. Blobs of wax will flatten it and quite often stabilise the drone reed as well. I mean, you just have to play around. You know, like drone reeds are quite. Whereas chanter reeds are a very sort of exact article, drone reeds are slightly more you know, antediluvian. they do strange things anyway, and you have to treat each individual one as a sort of as a problem on its own and tune it in your pipes the way it is. But you should be able to get your drones if your bag. This is taken for granted that you've got a good airtight bags, your clack valves are sound, your bindings are good, you don't have any cracks or anything like that. But basically, a good set of drones shouldn't use too much air. That's basically how they should play. So to recap, you've got all of the information there now to get your pipes playing properly. All you've got to do really is practice with reed making. It's a hands-on thing, it's a feel thing. You just got to get down and do it. You've got to make yourself do it. Start off on the drones, get your drones playing well. That will give you a feeling of sort of confidence, because it's nothing worse than having, you know, God, how are the pipes going to play today? How are they going to work out? You know, could it be tonight? Or they will do, you know, people are afraid to touch the pipes. Don't. You've got to be the master of your pipes, not the other way around. So spend a bit of time on it, you know. Get your drones playing properly, then practice a double reed making on the regulator reeds. They're much easier to get made than chanter reeds. Practice regs, get your regs right, and then have a go at more chanter reeds, and reed make a couple of times a week, or at least once a week, until you get it right. When you got it right,